Wow, is it Monday already? How about that? Welcome, 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 replayers, lurkers, eventual people to get to the chat. This is Zero Visibility. I'm your pal, Statistical L0, and it's time to sit and have a chat. I actually had to do some show note writing today. Take a page from a pal Vanessa's handbook and write a little show note. Have a drink of water because I was thinking a lot about some of the stuff I've seen on social media here lately, and it gets me thinking. Like, it's a problem of focus in comics. I think as an adult, do you focus on the creator and what they're doing, or just like the art work itself? I think it's alluring to really just want to talk about the person and what they're doing, what they think in terms of just what their life is going on, and just kind of put the book in the background. But I'm finding it more Oh, Amanda, welcome to the nest. She can hear me. That's good. I like being heard. Oh, driving through. Oh, not driving through the stream, I hope. I'll dive out of the way if I have to. Just let me know your license plate number so I know it's you plowing right through the studio. It's I notice on social media a lot. People tend to focus on the stances of the artist. Sometimes the book for shilling purposes, but I think going forward, something that I would really like to kind of dive into, especially for people that I have on this channel, and I do have one coming up for sure, but I want to know a little more about like the thought processes in how they came to the conclusion that they came to in terms of their books and how they think. Politics for an artist isn't as interesting to me as why they chose the art style that they chose to kind of like move towards, or what decisions went into making the book that they made, that kind of thing, because I think comics should be the forefront. I've heard a few times in a few chats that like comics was never supposed to be all about comics, which, I mean, I agree. You can't just sit and talk about all comics all the time, but I definitely think it should be a focus, because that's sort of what brings us all together, and it's what I feel we're trying to save. So why wouldn't you want at least some aspect of comics to be sort of at the forefront? Otherwise, what are we doing, like, in terms of trying to save this medium and preserve it for different people? Metatron's Cube, welcome to the nest. But it's one of those things where it's you're a comic book worker, comic book artist, comic book writer, inker, letterer, what have you, and you think you want to bring attention to comics, right? And that, because that's that's your bread and butter. You want excitement for that, and I think that comics themselves, as far as America goes, they live a healthy amount in the past. Like everybody loves this era of comics: 90s, the 80s, the 70s, and there is, while it's there's a little bit less presence for the current time stuff. And I think that's one thing that manga has locked down, is they're very concerned with current titles and current stuff, whereas the US tends to like to rehash properties and things like that, which independent, when if all you really do is pay attention to independence, you tend to get new stuff all the time, and sometimes I'd say it's like a weakness, because the person doesn't like it, it's not working out, they start over, they scrap it and start over, which sometimes that's warranted, but other times, you have no time to get invested in something after just 2 issues and then it's gone. Raven Saber, welcome to the nest. Good to see you. So I do have to wonder about that. This question: where would you focus? Would you focus on the creator or the creator's work? I can tell you that some of my favorite creators growing up, I had no clue what they looked like. I only knew about their book. It was years before I even saw what, like, the likes of like Ed McGuinness, John Byrne, Frank Cho, like any of these guys, what they look like. I didn't know. No clue. But I knew their work. And I do think that artists, can benefit from a little mystique, a little like not knowing everything that they're thinking and doing. But that's, as an adult, like you can't help but be aware of it, right? Just put this in. So I mean, with the YouTube thing, that's a situation where I feel it's a tricky thing to navigate. Hey, Bristolian Dave, welcome to the nest. Good to see you. I think it's a tricky thing to navigate because, I mean, like, it's great seeing your favorite artists. We all love hanging out with them. I do. But at the same time, if they feel like they've got to stream every day or, like multiple times a week, it almost becomes, to me, like a 24-hour news cycle. Like, there's some days they're just not going to want to stream. They're not going to have anything to talk about. So it's really low energy. It's not making for great entertainment for a great show. And sometimes that's where you get those arguments on streams, because just nobody has anything to say, so they start kind of fighting. Just like a 24-hour news cycle where, it used to be like, there's 2 hours of news and you could fit some stuff going on in the day into that. But then when you get 24 hours, you start focusing on, like, little girl was pushed down at school. Let's see a development on that. She's fine. It's not something that really needs to be in the news, but they're going to put it in there because they need stuff to fill that 24 hours. Just like, your favorite artists commenting on stuff that normally they wouldn't give a crap about because they need the content. Which I think for me, that's one thing that I tend to tune out for a little more, because I tend to like a stream where people are having, some adult conversations about stuff, about comics, process, whatnot. I'm not sure I really care about them just laughing and making fun of somebody because of an opinion they don't like. That might be like a far out there kind of a stance, but and a lot of times they may be like turning on their own and talking about, their friends, and that's when you get these rifts and these problems coming in. It's something where I do think that comics should come first, because like the studios, what they're doing is they take the comics and they push them to the background. They're the last in line behind TV, movies, toys, books, and stuff like that. And there's some comics have to have a spotlight somewhere, not just a product that that somebody's selling. Although, that's kind of how they get out there, is people sell them. But I do think that more people need to put that at the forefront. And I certainly try. Bristolian Dave says social media and YouTube has been great for networking and learning the craft. Amen to that. The problem is that we now know more about people than ever before, and unfortunately, people can be dicks. Yeah. Oh, I do think that you do have to have a level of forgiveness and a level of grace when something like this is going on, because especially with social media, and I know you guys all know what I'm talking about. You'll think a thought that sounds awesome in the moment, and then when you put it on paper, you say it out loud. After a couple minutes, you think that was really stupid. Why would I think that? Trouble with social media is, you think that this is a profound moment, and you put it online, like thinking like I've really hit on something here, and then as time passes, no, I didn't hit on anything. I'm just a giant idiot. But by then it's too late. You've got 50 quote tweets, and it's out there for people to talk about. But I was thinking a little bit about this this Tampa Bay / Jack situation, and how it's one of those things where you focus way too much on the artists themselves, and because nothing's going on with the books, like there are no updates to talk about, so you got to talk about something. So you talk about a con that everybody went to, and I guess I didn't know this, but from listening to Shane and Mandy talk and a few others, that the con wasn't that great for like sales. All right, like nobody really made a lot, but they got to meet each other and they got to have a good time, and that in itself is a huge thing. Okay, so Bristolium Dave kind of in the dark here. So the thing that's been going on lately is there's the Tampa Bay. A lot of people went to Tampa Bay, Florida, to a convention to meet up, and there were some people that didn't go that had commentary on it. Some people that did go, they had their their feelings about it. But then when you combine that with like opinions of like say the chat and whatnot, it turned into sort of a weird thing. And then the Jack situation, I guess Kelsey's not on there as much anymore, which I'm fine with it. It is what's going to ultimately be. I think he's focusing so much more on art right now that even his own stream he's not doing right now. I believe he's busy getting ready for his Scribbles book, which I'm unbelievably excited about. But see, that's the kind of thing. If I'm going to talk about artists, the thing that I want to talk about, like if I were talking to Kelsey, Praetor 7, welcome to the nest. He says, I heard at Tampa Bay everyone went to a murder dungeon and participated in human sacrifice. I think that's definitely one of the stories. I think it was more like a BDSM kind of thing. I know, like there was different nights. Graham had like a cigar night. They sat and talked, and there was a more of an adult oriented night. Had some criticism from others. I don't know. I'm so in the dark for some of this stuff. I have to sit and ask like, what, who? But at the end of the day, I'm wondering about how the comics are going, and I guess maybe that's just me, where I kind of got into this as a creator, as a cartoonist. I like hearing other artists' thoughts on how they come to the decisions they do. Now that's only BDSM, Burn a Dungeon, tomato. Yeah, I suppose it's a different pronunciation of the same thing. Hello, Marcus Killigrew. He's at work. Have a good day at work, and glad you dropped in. Welcome to the nest. Metatron's Cube says, I didn't even know Tampa happened. Kelsey had been on a few streams recently. At least it felt recent. Yeah, Kelsey was there, and I guess there were some shenanigans. He had a good time. He said it made him feel energized. But I saw this comment. On I think Shane's most recent stream, where this guy was talking about. Well, I think it's a guy. I'm gonna assume he was saying, like, we had all this kayfabe drama and everybody just kind of, went with it. And after getting to meet everybody, and having a great time, you get back to the internet and you realize that this kayfabe drama is kind of a pain in the butt, and most people don't want to deal with it anymore. And I've been thinking about that all morning. Just like thinking about like the bits that used to happen. Some of them would go on and just become memes, and some of them would get out of control and would lead to fights. That's, I think, partly like a symptom of that 24-hour news cycle kind of thing. Just having to have something to entertain your guests while you're not doing your comics. Jim Cox, welcome to the nest. John Malin is negative Nancy and seems to want to drag everyone down to his level. See, the thing is, and I've heard that, and I know John was he had a lot to say about the Tampa meetups and stuff. I don't know what the heck is happening, like as far as like what is really real and what isn't. Because you've had stuff where it looks like they're all fighting, but then they're still getting on stream, they're still having fun. So I mean, it couldn't be that bad. And then this particular, some of these things happen where it's like, oh wow, that's that's not a fake. In terms of like, you look at like the PTP situation, like he's off ball, or he left off ballers and stuff. He wants to do more his own thing and have more time with his wife. So there is some truth to some of that stuff that's going on in the back there. I don't know what. I'm not in those back rooms, and honestly, I don't mind not being in the back rooms. Marcus Killiger says, "Listen to John with Pete Cimetti to get the real John." I did see that interview, and he was very respectful, and he was talking comics and answering politely. And see, that's what I'm talking about. Like the stage character versus the real artist, the one that entertained versus the real one. It's sometimes those lines blur. I don't know. Personally, for me, I understand making the audience entertained, but at some point when the lines really blur, it turns into frustration, I think, because you don't know where you stand. Dave says, I tend to ignore the higher-ups in CG these days. Too much culture war and entertainment, not enough comics. Yeah. Praetor7 says, it's hard to separate the kayfabe from the reality when situations like the last Jack show with Branca happened. I didn't see that. I heard a little tiny bit. I imagine if John had stayed in kayfabe effect for that stream, would have been glorious. Now, I didn't hear about that. I mean, I heard a little bit. I don't even know who Branca is. But I did hear just the tiniest bit about, with the Kelsey stuff, and that he was there for a few hours and having fun, and then he got frustrated with some of the topics. Art T Bear's streams are always late. Yeah, Art's good at just sitting there talking about. The last couple I've seen has been a lot of pop culture type stuff, but some comic stuff as well. Self-defense lawyer. But what Jim Cox is. Where was I? Oh yeah. So John privates the stream, and everybody's talking about it. Like I think I mentioned last week, Kelsey was, or the week before, one of the two. Kelsey didn't really want to talk about it, but his chat really did. And I could kind of sense this a little frustration, which I think makes the Graybeards a little more enticing, because I mean they're on there just having fun talking and just drawing, which the audience loves seeing them, like compete to get through. And I think that's why that's one of the shows that's really rising. And I think that show particularly puts comics at more of a forefront, which I think the comic fans like. There is a large group of comic fans, but there's also a big group of just kind of your culture warrior fans that I put this in a tweet as a comparison. It's almost like buying war bonds, like to just kind of finance your favorite people so that they can keep on going, sending their messages. You give them some money, some super chats, buy their books just to keep them kind of around, not so much to read the books. Praetor7 says, that being said, I would imagine staying in kayfabe 24/7 would be incredibly tiring. I agree with you. And suck the fun out of everything. I'm fine with everyone lighting up on kayfabe. Yeah, I think some of that's just kayfabe is just there to create those crazy moments that everybody talks about. But then you either have to keep it going, or you have to like let the fun go away. Because I know, and I've heard this. Oh, Jim Cox disagrees with the war bonds analogy. That's fine. That's fine. It's something I was thinking about today in terms of I saw this one comment. Maybe it was a thing from one of Ethan's one of his campaigns, where this one person has said, we're going to back you no matter what. It would just really help if you treated us better. comparing it with, of course, some of the people that say like, you didn't treat us great, so we're going to, walk right away, which leads me to believe that there's a section of the audience that's just, they're there for the culture war stuff, and they're there to support that. So Jim Cox says, I enjoy some YouTubers, but wouldn't buy their books if I wasn't interested in the art or story. Yeah. I hear you. I've got plenty of those YouTubers myself. But then there's some that I don't watch at all that I bought their books. Marcus Killiger says, I met a couple of guys at HeroCon that backed all the comics and didn't read them. They wanted to support the culture war. Sure. Kayfabe's old, over it, moving on. Stippling Vaughn says, hello and welcome to the nest. And that's, see, the kayfabe thing, it confuses me a little bit. Not confuses me, but most people come here to meet the real artist, to see what they think about stuff, and to get something totally genuine, right? But then the kayfabe thing, most of it's not genuine. So, you're not getting that authentic, that real kind of thing. You're getting somebody entertaining you, which is more the YouTube side of things. And that almost feels like an antithesis of what is kind of going on. I mean, it works for YouTube, but in terms of like just, having the actual artist there for their thoughts and stuff like that, and not getting the BS, seems to be, like I'm saying, opposite of what, like becoming a YouTube character and just putting things out there. It works though. I mean, if you're looking for channel views and stuff like that, it works. You say something crazy, you get people to watch, brings up your interaction. You ever go on Twitter or whatever and see like the whole, like, who is this, wrong answers only, or does anyone know this movie? It works like gangbusters. Like, people just, they can't help but get in there and be like, that's Big Trouble in Little China or something like that. Bristolian Dave says, I want to see these old ex-pros using their channels to try to pass on their knowledge and really help grow upcoming talent in CG and indie comics. Yeah, I agree. And to a point, I mean, if you're thinking of somebody like Graham or Andy, especially, they certainly do that. Praetor 7 says, I know how in recent years we've learned about all these problems that existed behind the scenes in wrestling. I wonder if any of that could be attributed to staying kayfabe so much. It's possible. Of course, those dudes get knocked around and being in pain and having to be on the road all the time, and I'm sure that's all a factor as well, especially like when you're not as popular as somebody else, but you're working twice as hard. I can see that being a heck of a problem mentally. Bristolian, okay, so kayfabe should stay in wrestling, Dave says. Jim Cox says, I have a lot of books I haven't read, and I guess I did start off supporting the culture war based on them creating non-woke intersectional books, not for YouTube battling in the culture war. Yeah. And I feel like there are quite a few people that maybe started out with the war and turned into book backers, but or vice versa. They started book back and they decided, what, it's way just more immediate to get this entertainment from YouTube, which would actually like really skyrocket the importance of the channel, because that's where you're getting your money. Jim Cox says, John Malin used to help out smaller creators on his YouTube shows. Not sure I've seen much of that lately. I think he do it once a month, maybe, the Comicsgate Presents. That I remember seeing that, like, kind of like what Ballers does with Pimp My Ride, or not Ballers, but like Mandy and Shane does with Pimp My Comic. And you're right. I remember that being more of a regular thing from John. But now that you mention it, I'm not sure when the last, I suppose we could look that up. I'm not sure when the last one was. Oh, let me look here. Yeah, that's about right. But for me, I think, oh, Mandy says, I believe he has once or twice this year, but hasn't done it in a while. Okay. Because I remember he at least did one this year, maybe two. But put that there. Bristolian Dave says, look at Eric July. His thing started by utilizing the culture war. However, he seems to be making all the right moves, try to actually focus on comics build. Now, I thought I'm not sure if he has like multiple channels, right? But I know he has, he did rap music. He's been on the Blaze stuff like that, kind of doing the political stuff. Then he is on his channel talking, Marvel and DC and what's going on with them. I suppose lacing a little of the political stuff in there as well, kind of like marrying his audiences and stuff like that. But I know he had multiple forms of stuff, not so much just sort of the be-all, catch-all kind of thing. So, yeah. Oop. That on the right thing. All right. So I know that he got there just by putting his time in for like 10 years or something like that before he launched the comic thing. So, you could follow his example, but it's going to take a long time. Jim Cox found CG by following Vic Mignogna cancellation. Not even into anime. I think I found it by, gosh, was it? I suppose, I'm trying to think. It wasn't through Ethan like so many people. It was either through Geeks and Gamers. I think I briefly watched a couple of different personalities from that. Maybe a couple of Anna's earliest videos when the algorithm was pushing her like crazy when she was talking about The Last Jedi. Because she was on fire at that point. And then I think it kind of moved over into maybe Mandy. And then from Mandy, everything just like exploded and found all kinds of different people from there. Dave says he has a separate channel versus comic stuff called Ripperverse. That's purely comics. Yeah. And Pop XP. Yep. Marcus Kilger says Pop XP's Billy channel promotes small creators every week. Prater7 says I found it through Zach. I can't remember for the life of me how I found Zach other than him reviewing comics. Yeah. And I think, gosh, this is before I really realized just how many comic book channels were on YouTube. But then I also find out that many of the comic book channels I kind of fell out of favor with. There's that one comic tropes channel I used to, like briefly watch because I think I was looking for stuff on Darwin Cook to watch, like just to listen to while I drew because I'm a big Darwin Cook fan. And so this guy has a documentary, but there's just something about that guy that I don't really trust. Like I watched a couple and I don't know. There's something about how he talks, how he presents stuff that I didn't like. I can't describe it. Maybe you guys could. One that's come back that I always liked watching was Strip Panel Naked. You ever hear of that one? It's basically a comic book analysis channel talking about like what different artists, do well between the pages and gutters of the drawings and stuff. I find that one fascinating, kind of like deconstructing and ripping apart little pieces of comic book just to kind of talk about how it works. It's like opening up a watch and looking at the gears and theorizing about, what the watchmaker was thinking when he was doing it. That kind of thing is pretty cool to me. I hear Comics Kayfabe is one that a lot of people like. Haven't really watched a lot of that one. But then, once you find some of the CG stuff, especially early CG stuff, there wasn't really a whole lot of reason to go to other places because they did analysis. They did a lot of reviews. They talked about their favorite characters. This is, of course, before everybody a lot of people got into bookmaking. It was a very different place. Prater7 says, I feel like the majority of people watching this stream are more into comics and less into culture war stuff. Yeah, probably. Probably. And that's, I don't talk a ton of that stuff myself. Expand on your feelings regarding comic tropes. You piqued my curiosity. Well, when I started watching this show, I'm going to just read this quick. Metatron's Cube says, I was mad about Frank Cho getting dragged over sexy art for some time. Then I found Zach at some point recommended on the side of Comics Kayfabe video. Oh, really? Because I feel like they wouldn't be much for Zach, or unless YouTube did. But Cho, like, he's okay, I think. As far as I know, Cho's okay. I don't think anybody canceled him because he's just going to be like, I'm going to do what I do. And people are like, oh shoot, I guess you are. No apologies whatsoever. Comic tropes. He it's hard to say. Like, I don't want to speak bad, but there's just something I didn't like about his presentation of his videos after a little while. I I I don't know what it was. It could have been like it reminded me a little too much of like a actually, kind of personality, maybe. Um, I know the guy hates Comicsgate. I remember there's this point when Ethan or Comicsgate was talking. They were on in the chat for like a Dan Shaheen. You remember Dan Shaheen? They were in there, and he was one of the guests. He was talking, and then as soon as like Ethan and CG showed up, just the look of disdain. This guy could not hide it. He really doesn't like CG. Dave found CG through EVS. Yeah, Comics Trope is SJW and anti-CG. And I think as time went on, I started to kind of see that some of the takes that he had as far as comics and things like that were I didn't really agree with. And I watched for a little while, and then I just kind of I realized that like, this isn't it's not really for me. And I know he's got an audience. And I know, there are a few different comic channels. If you guys know any good comic channels, hey, let me know. I'd like to take a look at them. But I mean, like in terms of, there are still some CG ones. Like I said, Andy does a lot of like comics talk. Grant, when the professionals, they like to get together and like they like to talk old comics and stuff like that. But and that's that's the point that I had earlier. Like a lot of it stuck on things you liked when you were little. Like talking about old Avengers runs or something like that. Prater7 says, anytime I hear someone express hate for a certain group, I become more curious about said group. And that's a story that I have heard echoed over and over again. People were saying like, I don't like CG, or I hate that. And then the other people are saying, well, what is CG? And then they go in there and they say hello. And more often than not, they're met with, hi, how's it going? They, start talking comics with people and find out many of these people, not all of them, mind you, of course, you can't say that completely for any group. Many of these people really love comics and they are friendly and they don't mind, like people with differences. Again, I say some of them, not all of them, because I mean, you're dealing with groups here. Stippling Vaughn says, Bros is one of the best shows on YouTube. Yep. Good comics stopped around 2011, 2012. Funny you should say that, Metatron's Cube. When I quit comics for a while, it was around, and I've talked about this before, A versus X, Avengers versus X-Men. Beautiful art in that book. But that one and the return of Bruce Wayne when he came back doing all the time stuff. He was a pirate and he was a caveman and I think it was like Adam or Andy Kubert. I want to say it was Adam. No, Andy. That drove me away for a while. Praetor7 says, it's weird to hate a certain group of people, at least for broad reasons. I think about how many groups actually deserve hate. Very few. Word. Marcus Killer says, I used to watch cartoonist kayfabe, but Ed's fake wrap-up persona and the fact that he ghosted Dan Fraga turned me off. I don't know. I never really got into. I liked the format of their show. I liked how they'd take a comic out and just like go through page by page. And I think the closest we got to that is Joe Sontag. He goes through a lot of comics where he's got the camera pointed down and he goes through page by page and they talk about it. I like that. So I'll watch quite a few of his shows if I can't get to them, at night when they're on. When it's he and I think Sean Arndt and Kayla typically are talking comics. I will have a look at that show because I do like the comic analysis. I like comic analysis, and I like when people are really talking about the things that they like or don't like about books or just comics in general. I like hearing about what what stuff draws people to comics. Like I really wanted some good detective stuff, and I stumbled onto this comic, and holy crap, it opened up a whole new world for me as soon as I figured out how to read the panels and stuff. That's for really new people. Dave says I actually started getting into comics properly 12 years ago. I think it's why I have a much higher tolerance for today's comics. That might be. Metatron's Cube, it's cool when you can see the issues people are talking about, right? And that's a great, I think it's a great way for the chat to participate. It's been something, if I could ever get a camera, like I said, what I would have to do, it's sort of a pain in the butt. I would have to get a Cat 5 cable, like 100-foot one, and like run it through my house from where the Wi-Fi is, the router, and hook that up to make sure it's stable. Otherwise, you guys would get like your really blurry, grainy cam, and that's no fun for anybody. Predator 7 says, I wish the professionals would go through comic like you're talking about. I'd love to hear what all those guys think about what makes a comic good or bad. Yeah. And that's kind of the funny thing. I was really thinking about like when you get artists together, you don't really hear them talk a lot about process, because I think it's a situation where they all kind of have their own way of doing things. So they might ask a little bit like, I think more of the question would be like, how did you reach that conclusion? How did you get from point A to point B? Because I go do this, I get from point A to point B this way. And you see a lot more of that, which I really like, because I want to know about that thought process, because I've got my own thought process in terms of starting and finishing. You guys are watching it usually every week here, but how another artist thinks. I think when I start having artists on, like I said, I got at least one lined up. It's kind of a focus on, like, I want to know, what it is that influenced to bring their style where it is. Like, I want to know who it is that influenced them, and I want to know why it is that they chose to do their book like that. So for example, if you're talking to like Shane Davis, to figure out who it was that he read to pull his style kind of to where it is now. It's one thing to say like, oh man, I love me some Frank Miller, right? But it's another thing to say like, I don't learn anything from Frank Miller, I just love reading his stuff. That's the two different artists that you look at. You look at the ones that you love to read and that inspire you, and then you look at the ones that you learn from, right? Two different things. You could be the biggest freaking Darwin Cook fan in the world, but if he's not an artist that you're learning from, you might just be the guy that's like, I love Frank Cho. I think Frank Cho is one of the greatest artists. When I read his stuff, I just want to draw, but I'm a cartoony guy, so I'm probably going to be looking at Scotty Young to learn stuff from him, or Darwin Cook, or maybe Will Eisner or something like that, right? It's totally cool to admit that you love an artist, but you don't learn from them. I can tell you Jim Lee is an artist that I can sit and look at, but I don't really want any part of his style in mine. I don't have any influence there. When I look at his pencils, because I bought like Hush Unwrapped. You ever see those books where it's like complete pencils? They have a pencil, ink, regular version. I think they call it Noir. DC calls Noir the inked versions. I look at those pencils, and it's really hard to discern anything from anything else. Sometimes the way he draws, I don't really like it. And I think that's the same with Ethan. I like looking at Ethan's work, but it's not something for me to learn from. Not at all. I choose kind of a simpler path, a little more cartoony, a little clearer, a little more expressive. I think Kelsey is an artist I can learn from. I think, fast inking styles, really expressive stuff. that kind of thing appeals to me to learn more from. Um, but he also falls into the artists that I do like to sit and read through. And you can, and for those kind of artists, you can buy like the books that aren't even really for, like, more of a children's book, but you like how they lay the stuff out, like the what would you call it, composition of it. Dave says, what I want is more writer discussions and more writer streams. A sorely underdeveloped area in indie comics. Now that you mention it, that's true. I'm trying to think of. So let's see here. Artists or writers. I got Metatron's Cube says Kelsey's in the middle. He's got a great stuff. It absolutely is. I'm a huge fan of his stuff. Let me think. Writers. I know we got like Telepathic Bunny, big into writing. Vaughn. Sometimes we'll have. Right. Narwhal does a lot of writer streams where he just kind of either sits and talks with himself, talks with you about writer theory type stuff while he's writing, or he has somebody else on to talk. Geez, I'm trying to think about what else. I know we've got a few. Red Valkyrie used to do, I don't think they do anymore. They used to do that show, Writing Pros, where they talked about, writing, having, writers on and stuff, talking about that kind of thing. So it's there. It's just, Amanda says Phil and the rest of the Creative Block crew. Yeah, there you go. There's a couple right there. Obviously, Irene and Allie. Yep, Jim Cox is Irene and Allie. That's true. World building. They talk a lot about those different aspects, and I try to catch that show when I'm, usually it's on a little later than I'm up, but I like to catch that show on a rerun. Those are all really great streams for artists. Kelsey's a good one for writers rather. Kelsey's a pretty good one when he draws for art. So is Graybeards. Michael Bancroft does quite a few art streams. Good to look at those. Rob Geronimo likes to, he draws sketch cards a lot over on Alterna, the Alterna side of things. Sometimes you'll have a Alterna guest on there too. I'm trying to think of what other really good shows for people that just like, draw streams or write discussion streams. And that's something, if you're watching this on replay, there's already, I usually leave the chat up to go. I'm not sure. I know you know how to disable it, but if you are in the replies, go ahead and post great shows for other people to watch as far as comic book shows go. Like I said, as far as ones that aren't really affiliated with anybody or CG, I think Strip Panel Naked's a pretty good one. They just kind of tend to look at a specific scene and talk about it. Yeah, almost all of Samedi stuff, and he's been on fire lately, hasn't he? With interviews and stuff like that, he's been getting holy cow. Talk about some great talks. Hey, Danger Vanessa, welcome to the chat. Or the chit, she says. Because we're the chit around here. The chit chat. Get it? Comic Book Radio. Yep. Metatron's Cube says, Samedi. He's got some really good discussions. I agree. So yeah, if you're wondering where to go, those are all really good suggestions. Hangout streams, obviously, there's a ridiculous amount of those. Danger Vanessa, take a the jokes write themselves for that. And obviously the chat is a really good, I'm not just saying that because I'm on there, because I'm not always on there. But the chat is and has traditionally been a really good place to just talk about A, comics, and B, what's going on with creators. Drama or otherwise. But in terms of what I think I want to do, I really do want to focus more on the creative part. And not just talking about artists, but just talking about processes. Something for fans to get into. To talk about, to theorize. That's something that I truly miss seeing, is like the water cooler talk about the work. which I'll be honest, one of the ones that I see the most of, and I'm gonna find it real soon. Groken. I see me some water cooler talk about Groken, and I see me some water cooler talk about King Cryptid. Both of those, both of which I've backed, and I'm really excited to get both my second King Cryptid next year and Groken within the next few weeks. I'm real excited about that. It might be just a book where I have to just sit and look through it first. And ooh, Praetor 7. Have you mentioned Richard Friend's channel for watercolor talk? He's good. I totally forgot about that channel, but since you say it, I don't know if Kelsey still does it, right? But he used to be on Sundays with Richard Friend, and they would have some of the most amazing comic discussions you ever heard. I know they just sit and they'd pick a subject and they'd talk about like French comics or like Euro comics or stuff. What are your favorite ones? And they just talk about some awesome stuff. I forgot about that because I think there was a time when they weren't doing it for a little bit and it just kind of fell off my radar. I got to go back and see if they got any stuff for me to catch up on. John's Long Box, Marcus Kilgrew says. I haven't actually. Geez, I don't even know if I have looked at that. I might have, but I'm gonna write that down right now. Where's my pencil? Write that down behind the show notes here. There we go. Great. Metatron's Cube backs that up. Praetor 7 says, I'm pretty sure Kelsey was on this past Sunday. Ooh, good. That's good. Thank you. That'll be some great like listening material while I get some stuff done. They covered heavy metal. Interesting. That channel is 100% is comics and 100% positive. I agree, and that's the kind of thing I love, because I think in order to get comics more in people's like, what do you call it? In their view, you want to make it seem fun, right? You want to make it seem like not only are the creators having a decent time making their stuff, talking to the fans, but the fans are having a great time watching the shows, buying the books, talking about the books. That's how this grows. It's not just like convincing someone to buy your book. Because as we pointed out earlier, there are some people that just buy it, put it in a corner, and don't really read it. They're just supporting, the people. But I mean, just really getting shows going where people really want to participate in talking about stuff. That's the goal the long-term goal I'd like to see happen. That enthusiasm for the work pumped up, and just like discovering new stuff. Now, there is a downside to that, right? I'm gonna speak on this personally. They sit and they talk about these friggin' books, and they get me all excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, that book looks amazing. What am I doing? I'm going to find it. And I'm ordering it. And then I get that look from my wife, like, another package full of books? Really? I gotta expand my library. So I go on to these shows, and they're talking about all these absolutely amazing books that I've never heard of, whether it's like Euro books or it's whatever. And I'm like, I gotta find that. I gotta have it. But I think that's the intended reaction. That should be the intended reaction. You want to look at that and go like, I gotta read that. I've got to have a look. Dave says, let's not forget the best channel for good, honest comic discussing. Oh, stop. I need some sort of a reaction gift for that. Stop. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you. What? Actually, you said not, but I think let's now forget. Might be more accurate. DJ Khaled. And another one. Yeah, right. But it's out there if you look for it. It's just the problem is, I was making this comment to a friend of mine today. Usually, if you go into like a supermarket and somebody says something, like a kind word to you, it's like a excuse me or a forgive me or something like that, and then or somebody calls you an a-hole, you're gonna remember that guy that calls you an a-hole over the kinder person. As far as interaction, typically like positive interactions get left a little bit on the shelf, and people focus on the negative ones. And I think that's why drama just like blows up, and people really talk about it. you don't see as much like people just sharing the crap out of a really great stream where people are talking about, some great books, pointing people in the direction of like really cool stuff. You don't see that as much. I'd love to see it corrected, but I don't know if that's even possible. Anything's possible, of course, but there is absolutely a love for it, and I see it every day. Absolutely see it. I know it's there. Dave is correcting his spelling. I know. I feel like I want to keep it there. But yeah, the excitement's the name of the game, right? I mean, you want to get people excited so they buy your books, but at the same time, I always think it's great. And Billy does this on his updates. He'll put other people's books in his updates that he likes or he thinks you should have a look at, But I find that those comic analysis kind of things, not just, you've got the engaging ones like Stripped Panel Naked, but then you've got the ones where two guys are just geeking out over it, or girls, whatever, are just geeking out over something, and it's contagious. It makes you get on Amazon or, wherever, Half Price Books or wherever you get your used books or something like that, or new ones. I've been hearing a lot of people like sharing, which I bought this before I really, really saw the hype, but that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin, right? Where, one of the turtles, there's only one turtle alive, and he's going on like this suicide mission to stop some descendant into Shredder. Sounded good. Hadn't bought anything like that in a while, so I gave it a shot, and I'm about 4 issues in. It's not bad at all. I can definitely see where like people that like Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, and stuff would be like just gripping this book, saying like, finally something new. But it's not bad. But I've been hearing people talk about that quite a bit lately, which is good. We need more stories that get people's attention, and that's sort of like not quite mainstream, mind you. It's IDW. I mean, it's still Turtles and Nickelodeon, but it's a smaller book that people are actually talking about, and it's generating a little bit of a talk about, so I think that's a good thing. And I saw like a couple of those pages Shane was putting forward for like Inglorious Rex 2. That got me excited, because it looks like an even harder drawn book than the first one. So that kind of thing gets me ready to read. The only problem is it's like a book that's like 6 or 7 months out. It's not fulfilling until next year. So for that, geez, I don't know. What do you guys think? Should I back Accent? I want to have an honest opinion. I backed his art book because I'm an art process junkie, right? I got his book. Amanda bought Last Ronin. I'm curious. I'll be curious to see what you think of that. We'll swap notes once I finish reading it. Yeah. Just talk about comics, But as far, yeah, I'm still waffling on whether or not I want to back Accent or not, because I've got 2 series from him right now. I've got Starlight Cats and the other one. But do I want to start another series? That's the question. Stippling Bond says yes, you should. I might just the $75 for all 3 at once was a little bit steep at the moment. But yeah, I'm leaning towards it. Metatron's Cube says the Last Ronin book looked cool. Couldn't find it, so I got the newer TMNT game instead. It was fun. Oh, good. Yeah, I had to get it on. I got it from a used bookstore. And the great thing about books, a lot of times, is unless it's in acceptable condition, it's going to be pretty much new. A lot of times, not every time, but like the book grading system is really, really weird. Like, all that it takes is to bring it from like brand new to good condition is the one of those little red marks, like the overstock mark. And then that it's a brand new book. It's just got that little red marker mark on it, and so you get it, and it's a perfect copy, but it's still just good condition, right? So that's one thing I love about books. Dave says, I've been picking up a lot of cool stuff from small publishers in my local comic shop. Do a power bomb. I've heard a lot about that. I gotta get on that one. I haven't heard a bad thing about it. People are just raving about it. Astrobots and a couple of cool ones. Says they're making a game based on. I bet they are. That's the biggest thing Turtles and IDW have seen in a while. I've got their next book coming. The Lost Years. Is it next month or the month after? Maybe it's November. About when the character went kind of into the wilderness and what happened there. Stippling Bond says $75 is steep. That's why I'm back. I think I'm going to do a 2-part back. You know what I mean? Vanessa says, my Groken is in good condition. Which one are you talking about? The brand new one or the one that has been loved too dang hard? It's just sitting there in the corner like, all like, don't read me again, please. And the other ones are going, is that what we're in for? Oh, shoot. No, that's I kid. She says, yes. I kid. That's actually, I've said it before, but that's a wonderful thing to hear, that, somebody can enjoy a book that much. And I'm sure it's if you ever get to meet Kenneth in real life, you're going to have to bring that book. You're going to have to bring that book and show him what you've done to it. Like look him straight in the eye and say, you were responsible for this. And then just put it right in his face, like 3 inches from his nose, so that he can see what has happened. I think that would be, you'd go viral for sure. Especially if you recorded it. That'd be the greatest first meeting ever. But yeah, so was it Astrobots? I've never heard of Astrobots. I don't know what that is. But do a power bomb, definitely. Another one that I was looking at, I think it's on Kickstarter. That is that Sean Gordon Murphy Zorro one. I don't know if I'm going to back it on Kickstarter. Hopefully he'll have it somewhere else after, because I don't like Kickstarter. Taking out my stuff out a month later, it's a pain in the butt. As far as mainstream books, I think I got a couple of used copies of the Batman White Knight books coming. People have told me that that's one of the better things that has come out of DC in the last, I don't know how long. So I'll give those a try. They were real cheap, like $5 a piece. Kind of off continuity, out of the way, something different. I don't mind that. It reminds me of those old Elseworld books, you know what I mean? Like Vampire Batman or Civil War Superman, Kingdom Come. Those standalone books that were just kind of pushed off to the side as their own stories until they got sucked into the stupid multiverse thing. But yeah, gave that a try. While I'm waiting for all my books that I backed on Indiegogo and or personal sites. I think Alterna's got some their spring stuff coming. I'm really excited about Alterna's books. Praetor 7 says Sean Gordon Murphy needs a writer. I hope he's watching too, because someone needs to tell him the truth. Is that right? Is it one of those situations where like the art is really, really good? Which I'll probably flip through it more than I read it anyways. But his Zorro stuff, from what I've seen, looks awesome. Kind of reminds me of Chris Samnee a little bit, except Samnee's more of a broad stroke guy, and he does a lot of contrasts and stuff like that. Big fan of that kind of thing. Real simple, high contrast work. Dave says, though my local comic shop is how I got my Exiled floppies, the Wesley Snipe comic. More publishers are popping up, which is great for indie comics. I don't think they have a choice. I think that the demand and the stuff coming out of the big two is getting smaller and smaller. Did you guys see, speaking of just like a slight detour from comics, that Disney is now releasing seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian and WandaVision and Loki on Blu-ray DVD? They said they were never going to do that. You're going to have to go to Disney Plus to get the goods, and now they finally caved. So I kind of wonder if, like, Comics isn't in the same situation. You know what I mean? Like, we got to do something because nobody's buying our crap. And they'll be, you know, I think they already failed out of I think they failed out of the young book market. Vanessa says, are they going to open up the Disney Vault again? I don't think that they've closed that friggin' thing since who knows when. But I believe the 4K stuff is starting to come out now. I'm sure they'll wait till, you know, it's like 4D chess, right? When that Snow White movie comes out and inevitably bombs, they're going to release the original one on 4K along with it, and people are going to buy that like crazy because they'll be like, I got to show my kids the real Snow White, right? Not go to that one. So they're gonna you know, do okay either way. It's a lot like the Little Mermaid. I think when that came out, that movie, the original movie, like, sales must have skyrocketed because people were like, we reject this. Same with Scooby-Doo. Like, when they canceled that movie, people were buying Scooby all over the place because they were like, I got to show them the real Scooby. Or no, Velma. It was when Velma came out. People were buying the real Scooby-Doo thing. And you know, to show their kids the proper thing. So either way, the company won. Bristol Days, the streamers are losing money. They've been ignoring the whole physical media market for too long. We will see more streamers pulling out more physical releases. I'm starting to see that too. Although retailers are giving less and less space. So I wonder if it just won't go to an online only or maybe a print on demand. Who knows? Prater7 says, I've noticed that whoever published Star Wars books seems to have put an emphasis on publishing their Legends books, which I think says a lot, right? Marvel publishes them now. And the Legends books, that's just all the old Dark Horse crap, isn't it? Like yeah. Prater7 says, or Marcus Kilgore here says, I'm going to back Accent. And Vanessa says, I know a guy who sang I Can't Wait to Be King song, got another royalty check. He had a great mom who got him a good contract. Oh, that's great. Nice. When the live action Lion King was released, sure. Prater7 says, I meant prose novels, not comic books, although that may be true too. Oh, okay, I see. But that's true. Like, prose novels they've actually been eating. I've noticed that books, prose novels have been eating more real estate in retail places. Like, movies are shrinking and books are expanding. This is, I suppose, for all those people that said like digital books are going to absolutely kill physical books, and it actually had the opposite effect. The only problem is I really don't know if that works for movies, because the streaming stuff for so many people is just so dang alluring. The terrible thing about books is when you move, I know, I don't know if we're ever going to move, but I'm dreading it because I've got a lot of hardcover books and a lot of thick omnibuses. I'll have to just do a lot of small boxes. Books, those are Amanda's favorite. Yep, and I bet she uses a magnet for like a bookmark. Dave says digital will never kill physical media. People like to snip their books too much. Yeah, those dirty book sniffers. Doesn't that sound like a some sort of a thing you'd say when you're shaking your fist? You dirty book sniffers, get out of my bookstore. Use a dolly, Metatron's Cube says. Yeah, that would probably be the worth it way to go. But I mean, I'm the point coming across all of this. Focus on creators or work. I don't think we can help but focus on creators, because I mean, like, the magic's kind of gone. You know, people are writing and drawing it, and there's a curiosity that takes place there. But in terms of the work goes, I want to talk about more of it, like we've been doing here just for a little bit, just kind of swapping back and forth what kind of comics to read, what kind of stuff is kind of lighting our fire. That sort of thing it's fun. It's fun to talk about that stuff. Stippling Vaughn says original Marvel Star Wars run is epic and superior to everything afterwards, which I think actually Marvel has put that out in their epic collections. I know I saw they had their comic strip collections across 2 volumes. It's not quite ideal because you have to take like the regular comic, flip it on its side, and then pull the pages up to read that stuff, which is kind of weird. I wish they would have actually just bound it at its side, made a landscape book, but they decided not to. Very weird. But yeah, they've been publishing all the Dark Horse stuff in epic format for a while now. I like Marvel's 80s movie book series. I don't know if I know that. But I mean, I think that's also another thing that a lot of people are kind of seeing, that, you've got 100 years of books and movies to go back and look at, and many that you haven't, and they're reprinting now more, I think, than ever, reprinting old stuff in just like these big cheap collections. I love it, but at the same time, the glossy paper really changes the way the art looks. Oh, I see what you're saying, Metatron. Like Blade Runner and the other movie. Yeah, the old movie adaptations, which they don't do anymore. I think the last one I remember seeing and getting was Predators, the third Predator movie from Dark Horse, back when they still had it. Dave says, speaking of Marvel Epic collections, I'm currently collecting the Amazing Spider-Man releases. I got two of those, right? I've got Maximum Carnage, which it let me down a little bit, that he was defeated with positivity. And then I've just got the Kraven's Last Hunt for the Amazing Spider-Man. That one. I've got about maybe 8 or 10 volumes of just across the board. The only way I'll own Amazing Fantasy is, well, reprint anyways, right? Like so many of us. Stippling Vaughn says, I need the strip book. 2 of them. They'll run you a little bit. I think they're out of print maybe, so they're going to cost like $30 to $50 used. But you can still get them. I saw them a listing on Amazon. So 2 volumes, I think, is all you got there, and you'll be able to read your Star Wars strips to contentment. Yeah, I think we'll call this sketch done here. All the Predator and Terminator comics. Yep. I want to say that the Predator books have been released by Marvel in these big omnibus collections, like, you're talking like the 800 to 1,000 page ones. Alien's got 3 or 4 of those because they did a lot of Alien books. I don't know if I've seen any Terminator comics yet. I don't know that if they've done an omnibus for that yet. Of course, I think of the 3, Terminator had the fewest comics between Alien, Predator, and Terminator. Alien definitely had the most. So yeah, dang. Yeah, they've got these giant flipping omnibuses that they went ahead and just dumped everything on and kicked it out the door when they acquired all these properties. So they're going to run you $80 to $100 at least, 120 maybe, to get a big thick old phone book. And that funny, phone books don't really exist anymore. Most kids probably don't even know what they are. But yes, I'm taking away the comic books, especially from this chat. Comic books are alive and well. Enthusiasm is still there. People are looking at independent, old books. I love seeing people recommend. Do they sell them on Amazon? I believe they do. Let me have a quick look here for you. Why not? We'll perform a public service. All right, let me see here. All right, let's have a look at the. So we've got Amazon. You can't really see, just my drawing. Yeah, Alien Omnibus Volume 4, brand new, $70. The first omnibus, brand new, $106. Let's have a look at that. It's called The Original Years. And you're looking at 1,024 pages for $106, $79.99 used. Yeah, they got a whole bunch of them. They got lots of stuff. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them cheap-ish. Yeah. So if you like your Alien books, your Predator books, they got them for you. It's nothing special. Like I said, they just dumped it all on a big fat book, 1,000-page thing. But you can still get them. I think that's the current way to do it. I don't think they broke them up into anything like that. It's just like a real fast kind of thing. here you go, kick it out the door. But hey, we are 9 minutes and 50 seconds past the hour. Had a great show. Love talking books and recommendations with you. I got a couple of things written down for channels to look at, and a couple of books to look at. Maybe to do a power bomb and take a look at John's Long Box channel. Hopefully you guys found some stuff maybe that you didn't necessarily think of. That's always like makes it worth it, right? Sit and have a great talk about, hey, what are you reading? I don't know, what are you reading? I'm reading this. Oh man, that's cool. I've never seen that before. That's the idea. That's what keeps things going. So I'm gonna get out of here. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you when I see you next.